Welcome to, I am of course tempted to say the most fun and fascinating session of OEB this year, but it's very difficult to say that because all sessions are fun and most fascinating. So then let me say welcome to the session that hopefully will wake you up and prime you for the excitements to come. My name is Monica Weber-Fahr. I'm with a small international organization startup firm operating out of Vienna, Sustainable Energy for All, and I am delighted to be your host this morning, I think is what one would say. We wanted to first hear from you what you're thinking about the exciting topic of accelerating, making time for learning in the age of acceleration. And we wanted to first hear from you answers to 4 questions. So the first question, can I have the first question up? And you should know how to fill out the survey right now using at least one mobile device. I think most people have. Who in the room doesn't have a mobile device on them? One person doesn't have a mobile device. Look at that. Okay, who's got 2? Okay, who's got 3? Okay, can we share? Okay, because we're not only in the digital or in the accelerating age, we're also in the sharing age, right? So the first question should be there. I don't actually see it on the screen, what the question is. Can I hear the question? Oh, okay, it's coming up. Magic, magic, magic. And I can tell you it works. Okay, so the question was, do you feel we live in an age of acceleration? And it was supposed to be 1, no, 4.5. So that means out of 5, most people feel we do, right? Then look at your screens, and there should then be the next question. Oh, you want the address. Okay, back to the address. It says rather small. It's very small here, right? Hashtag OEB talk. Does that work for your address? Can you find it? You see, it's all learning by doing, right? So this is no academic talk, learning by doing. We are all learning how to submit a comment. So the second question that we had was not whether you feel we live in the age of acceleration, but it was about finding time for learning. So has everybody feel they voted? Yes? No? Okay. Can you find it on your screens? Okay, busy voting? Oh, okay, so voting is over. You see, when something doesn't happen fast, you're not in. Okay, oh, look at that. Some people taking a last minute, and it's moving up. So, bad for the adequate people, right? Bad. And nobody says there's more than enough, but the adequate people are losing fast. Okay, before we go into 0, with the adequate, and this might be rather a disaster for all of you working in corporate learning and whose job it is to actually create the adequate time. Maybe let's get to the next question. The next question is more about your company, right? That your advisors see, do staff have time to learn there, right? Okay, that's where you work. That's where many of you actually contribute to learning. That is where it might be your job to make the time for learning for others. Okay, looks to me like, not very good, right? We should maybe show this, publish it as an outcome of OEB 2016, right? The business educard doesn't think our staff have time to learn. Would that be the answer? And then the last question, when do you think companies should invest most time in learning in a structured way, in a way that doesn't leave it to the staff, in a way that is driven by the company culture, by the company setup, when they start something, when they want to improve something, or when they want to grow? And the trick is you can only choose one. So it's always hard, right? Making priorities, making choices, getting on what is the critical path. Okay, so nobody really likes to learn when you grow, right? Because you already maybe know everything. Improving seems to take a lot more learning than starting something. Interesting. Does it stay the same? Oh, okay. Everybody voted? Or voted? Can I have a yes or no? Okay, so I think we have a good picture. We nearly have equal votes for in this room where you say when you are improving or when you're starting something you want to grow, want to invest in learning, but when you're growing, maybe not, and we'll find out why. In the back, we've got a few more chairs coming in here. So with that in the back of our mind, I would want to invite 3 illustrious speakers, or actually, I don't know whether they're illustrious, they're fun. I think they want to be fun, right? So we have Xavier Durochat, we have Marcia Connor, and we have Andreas Mack. If I can please have you all come up here. So we have 3 speakers who all of them have in their lives elements of learning and of time. In that, from the time perspective, when you had a chance to look up their CVs, they have all reinvented themselves over time in various ways. They're all teachers in some form or another, whether it's a coach, whether it's a trainer, as a professor, as a corporate learner, and they're also learners themselves. And we will ask them today what their perspective is on living in a time of acceleration, and what that means for making time for learning. And I have the honor to introduce first Xavier. Xavier, who is a self-prescribed coach and supporter and learner. Xavier, please go ahead. You've got 15 minutes.
Oh, 15 minutes.
It's all about time today.
Okay, hello. So I'm Xavier Durochat. I'm head of learning, change and transformation in BNP Paribas International Retail Banking. So first, I would like to present what's international retail banking. I won't have any slides, so sorry for you. International retail banking is all the banks from BNP Paribas Group who are outside Eurozone. So it's 17 countries, is 55,000 people. And more, we have some banks, 70 people, a bank from 15,000 people. We have some banks who are in the group for 1 year, and we have some people who are 70 years, so that means in corporate culture it's fully different. We have some banks who don't have any access to new tech. In Burkina, it's more difficult than in US or in Turkey. We have in a very, very strange world, and in that way, we have also to develop a learning strategy. And in the banking system, we have new competitors. We have fintechs, all of you understand. We have new regulation. And the world is going faster and faster. And we have to adapt and to answer to the need of our client, but also to employ a very, very fast way. For many years in the banking system, what's happened? We invite our client to not come on the branches. And we win. Nobody is coming on the branches. I'm sure that ask you when you was the last time in the branches. You remember, try to remember, I'm sure it's more than 2 years. Even 3 years. We call that digital banking. We win. But what does it mean? Nobody is coming. And when they are coming, what are people doing? They have every information they find on the web. They know more than our people in the bank, our commercial people. So, and they want a fast answer. That's a problem. So what we did, we say digital banking. We will digitalize inside the company. We call digital working. How to work and to give to our client a fast answer. But it's a big change for the bank. It's a big change for people. It's a big change for employees. It's a big change for management. We decided to create some new tools. We integrate some corporate social learning, a corporate social platform. And all these tools means a new way of working. A new way of working is a big change for us, for all of us. because the manager don't know how to manage some people who are at home, who are flex office, who are working differently, who don't know how to manage people when they are distant. And that means we have a big challenge in terms of learning, because it's faster. But after this experience, we say, okay, we are customer-minded, but now we want to be employee, develop the employee experiences. And employee experiences, what means for us? Very simple. We have to change in terms of HR. And what want the employee? They want to be considered as employee, and they want to be considered as unique person. They don't want to appertain to belong to a group. And what does it mean? That means we are integrating some big data. We are integrating some new tools who help us to support and to give the best answer for our employees. And that's for HR. But what does it mean for learning? I won't say we are in a global bank, so the learning strategy is local. I mean, some are part in the global, and some other part are in local level. We cannot have a global answer. So 6 years ago, 95% of our learning was just classical classroom training. Very easy. No program is just classroom training. We blend all our solutions. No program developed on learning in BNP Paribas are classroom training. It's very important. But what we mean, we develop a large scope of program. We have some e-learning, Kleenex learning. Kleenex learning, it's a learning we just have a few days or few weeks of life and after disappeared. We develop some MOOC. We develop some motion, business game. We develop some solution just dedicated to the need to our client, and our client are people. But we have to develop more faster. Because young generation and old generation, when they have a need, they want an answer. And they don't want to wait that learning give them the answer. They don't have to wait that we develop e-learning. We don't wait that we will be on classroom training. We want an immediate answer. We want an answer, and learning become not based on compliance. It's become to be based on efficiency. They want an answer immediately. So what we are doing now, and it's a big subject for us, is to develop and to use these tools, what we call the corporate social learning places. What does it mean? That means that in a corporate, 50% of the knowledge of the corporate is not shared. If you valorize that, it means it's billion of euro. We have throw it away. When the people is leaving his position, we lose this knowledge. We don't know what it is. We don't know where it is. And we have to capture the knowledge. And this knowledge belongs to our employees. So we decided to launch this corporate social and make that knowledge community. We will work on the knowledge community. And what we want is our experts, our people who have knowledge, share this knowledge on the social place. So we want to facilitate that. We develop some, when in the current life you have YouTube, or you have a problem, what you are doing, Google is, or you are searching an answer on YouTube. And in the corporate, you want the same. You want to have a fast answer to your problem. If you want, and we have to offer the same thing. So we offer the same thing. And we try to offer some YouTube inside. We try to offer some place where people can share their experiences. And like that, employees, whenever need, they launch a bottle on the system, or the system push them some solution, which is training solution, which is expert profile. In that way, the employees have an answer. And what's very interesting, when you have a learning tools, a video of 5 minutes who explain, or 3 minutes who explain some subject, we invite him, if you want to go more, go on your LMS, and you will have a path. And if you push a contact, an expert, we are slowing down on the learning because the people will contact the experts, and we will going on-job training. So the learning will go faster and faster, and we have to give to our people a fast answer. So fast learning, fast developing. But in the same time, what we develop is another program, on-job training. We know coaching, mentoring. We know all these solutions, and we have developed for our talent. We continue and to reinforce that. You know the 70-20-10. We are working more and more on the 70%. Few years ago, we invest 100% on 10%, which is a 10. Now we are working on 70%. And more, for our talent, we say we develop some partnership. And our talent, what they are doing, very simple, we invite them for 3-4 months to go on startup, to go on different other company, just for a few months, just to learn from this company what could be best for us. So we have in a faster learning, and we develop it, but we are slowing down to a classical on-job training, classical one-to-one training. That's our vision of. But what does it mean for my team? 6 years ago, my team, I have some trainers. And these trainers, what they are doing, they are going on countries with a hand luggage and open and make a courses. I don't have any trainers. We still have some trainers in the countries. But when these trainers are going in the country, it's not to give some knowledge. Is to share, is to make some workshop, is all this job which is fully different. We are not here to give you a knowledge. We are here to share your experiences and to ask some questions. So it's more interactive. So that's a big change. In my team, what I have some people who are working on community management, supervision management, knowledge management. We have some people who are working on data analysts, or data scientist, just for the supervision of the community. So we change, but some of my team are the same. They just accept to change from their own job, which was before trainers, to a new job. And when I say new job, I don't become just a community manager. I'm community manager, and perhaps I am a coach, and perhaps I am. So they have multiple activities. And if you ask to my people, would you like to come back 6 years ago? They would say, never. They take the risk to change. They follow me to change. And in all the country, they say, my job today is better than yesterday. But believe me, when I arrived 6 years ago in the bank, people say, this guy will disappear in 3 months. He will leave the company. Because he's so crazy, we are in a bank. He don't understand the mindset of the bank. How? He's from outside, he's not banking-minded, he's not... No. They discover what? That the world is changing very fast. And if we don't adapt, people, our employees, will search the knowledge outside of the bank. And perhaps this knowledge outside of the bank is not the knowledge we want to develop. It's perhaps the knowledge of outside the bank is a fake knowledge. We don't know. So we have to adapt ourselves, and we did it. And I'm glad that we did it. Because no employees, we are just in the beginning, but no employees feel better. They have access to knowledge, they can develop to the knowledge on a faster way and slow down way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier.
Okay.
Thank you, yeah. So our first perspective on the theme of acceleration was from somebody who has completely turned around the way learning is done in a very large corporate. We're driven by acceleration in the customer experience. Then a complete change came in how much time was given for learning. Much less time for the moment, just-in-time knowledge learning actually, where then also much more time was given for on-the-job learning than beforehand, and the job of those that were in charge of learning completely flipped. So that's just one thing to remember before we go to the next one. Keep your questions in mind, and you can already send them here to the hashtag. We will put up all your questions in a moment, once we had all three perspectives, and then we will take from those questions to inspire the discussion. So with that, I would like to move from the corporate perspective to the startup/innovation perspective. Andreas, a self-proclaimed innovator, what's your view on the age of acceleration and finding time, making time for learning?
Thanks very much. Thank you very much for having us here. I think this is a really interesting panel, and I love the question, is speed the end of learning? I brought some eye candy that needs to come up, guys.
I think eye candy means PowerPoint.
The presentation.
Our tech friends.
See?
Oh,
I promise you some eye candy. So my name is Andreas Mack, and I'm the co-founder of Partake, which is an innovation consultancy. Some people put us in the drawer of creative consultants. I don't like the drawer. We do design thinking. We try to get rid of drawers. That's one of my major aims that I still follow in my professional life. I also teach in a digital master's program here at Berlin University of Arts. I teach innovation management and internet user psychology. So my angle is an entrepreneurial as well as a digital and a cognitive science one. I think all of that applies if you try to answer the question for this panel. In my professional life, I have a lot to do with learning, then teaching, and then learning again, and I find that very, very productive for myself. It helps me develop and learn and try to get a grip on what's really happening out there, because I feel that in both fields, both my consulting practice and in university, learning has changed dramatically. I'm mostly interested in new knowledge. How do you have an idea? How does this happen? And how do you get it across? How does an idea make you productive? So that's also part of my angle. I'm interested in how can I learn quickly and turn lessons learned into immediate action. That's something that my students want to know from me, and that my corporate clients want to know from me. We have so much knowledge in our data banks, people don't use it to be productive. What's the problem? I would like to address that on this panel. So I find that the famous proverb, look before you leap, that had been first turned around in a poem by W.H. Auden, as a good headline for what we're facing. We must leap before we look. That means you have to start jumping, and you don't know where you're gonna land. And while you do that, while you're in flight, you try to grasp as much knowledge, ideas, try to process it, and then figure out where you're going to land. What does this describe? This describes a successful innovation process. I work with a lot of corporations whose innovation pipelines are dead. Why is that so? Because they try to work towards a fixed goal, a KPI, and they just ignore reality on the way towards that goal. And Xavier, thank you very much for your points. I don't really envy you, because I'm not sure anymore if large organizations are at all a good environment for productive learning. I think they're too big to learn, and what I experience is often that big organizations like to streamline knowledge. They like to assimilate individuals, and then they call that learning. So that's my angle for today. But now for something completely different. How do corporations learn? How do successful corporations learn? You might say eBay is not so successful anymore. Okay, I'll go with that. They started out as an auctioning platform. Now they're a shopping catalog. So they have evolved, they've learned something. You all know that Google started out as a search engine. Now they are a universe from A to Z. So they have expanded, they have built upon what they learned from us very quickly, on an instant. And there's YouTube. Who of you knows what YouTube started out as? A dating portal. You were supposed to upload images or movies of yourself so you can find an interesting partner. Obviously, YouTube has also evolved extremely and learned from what their customers wanted to do with that kind of product that they offered. So apparently these startups learned quickly, at least quicker than others, and quick enough to make their own markets. And that's just remarkable. How do they do that? So maybe there's something we can learn from startups. But before we do that, I would like to discuss what speed is. And in preparation of this panel this morning, I said that my grandmother, who was born in 1897, not alive anymore today, I'm afraid, in her lifetime, she experienced acceleration that I could not fathom. It's huge. So now I'm facing my reality with my kind of acceleration, and I have to get a grip on it. And I think the human mind is designed for that. So I don't have a problem with what speed is. Is there a limit to what we can biologically achieve in speed learning? And there's one figure that you see up there. It's, I think, about 275 miles per hour, just about. That's the speed that a signal takes from one axion, one nerve cell to the other. That's Wikipedia knowledge. It's not precise, but roundabout. It's a ballpark figure. I really like that, because is that the physical barrier for learning? Could we maximize the speed of learning? And this is where the question becomes kind of stupid. You realize that? Because combining learning and speed is only a linear function. And learning, that is my next point, I don't believe is really linear. But let's have a look at what speed does to you. You know G-force, you know images of people who are suffering from G-force in a plane. They have distorted faces. Oops, distorted faces. Looks really funny. I didn't want to bring you any of these faces. So there is also experience of speed, and at one point we suffer from it and we pass out. So there is biological barriers to speed. What do we need to know about speed? There's all kinds of speed. There's velocity, that's the range of the change of an object position. There's rapidity, there's acceleration, frequency. There are periods that we describe. So all of this has to do with progression and speed. And speed cannot break the law of physics, but our brain can. We can imagine ourselves to be on Mars, and that's not a linear function. And from that imaginary journey, we can come back and we'll have an innovative idea, and that is not linear. So while speed is linear, learning doesn't have to be, and I think that mind maps are a really good example of why that is so. Of course, on a mind map, you can go from one point to the next, and you can figure out your way towards the next node. But you have also other information. You see what kind of items are associated, in this example, with time management. You see what kind of imagery is associated with it. You get a feeling, a gut feeling, if this is big and if you like it. And you see all of this happens here, not necessarily here. And that is interesting about learning. In my workshops, especially with corporations, I face a lot of people who try to analyze everything. They're looking for 360 views on every issue that they try to work on because they're risk averse. And the poem by W.H. Auden that says, "Leap before you look," talks about the beauty of in life when you take risks. If you cancel out the risk and if you want to learn everything that you need to know, you're on the wrong path. Please come back. So, how do we experience learning? We experience learning like when the penny drops. That is a sudden realization, an instant connection that happens in our brain and that is not linear. An idea is born in the glimpse of time. We have an emotional reaction or a translation from a different field, an analogy, and all of a sudden everything makes sense. That is really interesting learning. Today and from here on, we need new learning strategies to cope with the speed or with the acceleration or with the velocity that we're experiencing. And as humans, we have physiological limits, but our brain is actually a fantastic machine that can surpass these laws of physics. What we need to get a grip on to learn better is to distinguish between what's complex and complicated. This is an issue we need to solve. So something that's complicated, I would advise you to kick to the curb. It's not necessary and not productive. Things that are complex, you can resolve with an easy solution if you change your perspective. So dealing with complexity is something that our mind is designed for. Dealing with complication is something that our mind hates. So get rid of complexity. What we need to get a grip on is what is better, logic, following from A to B to Z, making conclusions, or is it pattern recognition that machines can do today? I'm talking about big data. Big data is not intelligent, but it shows us patterns in data that our mind could not process anymore. Now, do I have to understand how the algorithm works? No. I also don't know how the algorithm in my car works that helps me to steer it and accelerate. We also need to get a grip on remembering versus forgetting. A lot of learning tools are designed to remember everything. Some say the internet is designed to do that. I see a huge potential for forgetting. Because our brain only works if we forget, and the internet is starting to use what we call the ephemeral web. All of you might have heard of Snapchat, where you get an image and then all of a sudden it disappears. That is an important angle on being better and more productive and learning to forget. I work with a lot of people who have been living in large corporations for 15 or 20 years. They have problems thinking outside the box. They have problems to learn how to forget. So what is it that we are after? Do we need to process bytes per second? Or are we interested in rich learning experiences that we can share and that have a social drive to them? And I think that you can tell from the way I said it what I would prefer. Mechanical learning is a thing of the past. So can robots help? Can software help, please? Everything is so complex and maybe complicated, so we're looking at robots. We might want to look at artificial intelligence. And I don't believe in it. I don't think it's very improbable that humans will be able to design something that even comes close to the most complex thing that we know in the universe, that is our brain. I believe in swarm robots. I believe in small units that do simple tasks. They're much more robust and they can be much more effective than a software that tries to be everything. Look at Excel or Word. They have a capacity that's just humongous, and most of us use maybe 1 or 2% of the possibilities in the software. So that shows me that Excel is not good for learning. How smart are robots? You all know the little guy, Asimo. You know him, right, from Honda? He walks like that. When Fukushima happened, unfortunately, people called in and said, "Can Asimo help?" What did Honda say? No. Because how intelligent are robots today? About as smart as a piece of toast. It won't stay that way. They'll learn to copy our patterns and help us process information on a different level than we do today, but it's still some time off. I don't think we should look for artificial brains. We should look for small solutions that help us make the next step. In learning tools, I often find that they are data banks and they become knowledge dumps. They're never complete, their availability is a problem, and their relevance is never up to date. Why is that so? Because once you stored it in your corporate learning portal, it's already old. And I accessed it not through your corporate learning portal, but because I was out there in the digital universe and I brought it home from there. So corporate learning is always lagging behind. Swarm solutions are much more promising. That means dividing complex tasks into simple ones, and that is proven to create very manageable and robust solutions. We now have technology that processes information and produces knowledge that we have no clue about before. That's the patterns I was talking about in big data, and they shape our lives every day. What I find effective in learning are methods and tools, may they be software or may they be something that you work with on your hands, when they document behavior. When I can see what you are doing in my project, what you are doing, what you have done, what's the next thing that you will do. That also feeds into my belief that you only learn through behavior. That's why social learning is so interesting, because I get feedback and I can give input, and that is what makes us productive. So what can we learn from startups, and why is it good to have a look at it? Because startups don't have the resources of large corporations. They have not been making money for the past 100 years. They have not created the systems that allows them to make money and continue to making money. So just within that context, they have to make different decisions. They have to focus on what's doable, not what is a 360 view of reality. What info do I need right now to make the next step? That's what I call productive learning. They have to be radical in their connection to the user perspective, or other people call it customer centricity. That is something that produces results. If you have an idea with the person who wants to learn something or achieve something, what they find to be productive, and if that is your guide, you might want to use software for it, but it's not a learning tool. We need to learn to work in small batches to reduce complexity, and we need to give instant response, instant feedback. That is agility. Agility means shifting your efforts quickly, and large corporations and institutions can't do that anymore or have great problems with it. I believe in quick and effective learning loops as startups do them. If something breaks down, you go meet and fix it, and then you do the next step. Also, and I pointed that out earlier, I don't believe that result-driven processes are very productive, because, especially in large corporations, if you underperform, you're in trouble, but you're also in trouble if you overperform. And I don't believe in that. So it'd be much more interesting that on a path of building knowledge and learning and trying to come to a result, you figure out what is the best objective when you get there. And that is how I think we can be much more effective in learning. We don't have to do things right anymore. We have to focus them on who we're doing it for. And that is my conclusion. We can learn from startup companies, and we need to stop pretending that we're in control. We need to acknowledge uncertainty and embrace volatility. We need to let intuition be our guide and rely on the irrational. Also, we need to forget what we already know, and that is what I refer to when I speak of leaping before you look. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think you can now see why we put Marcia in between Xavier and Andreas, right? Because not only wants Andreas us to embrace acceleration and everything that comes with it, but also around that there's a very strong perspective on how making time for learning would be different if you were to truly embrace it. Now, with that, let's go over to Marcia. Marcia.
Oh, was I stuck in the line?
Watch out.
Good morning. Before I get started, I need to share with you the fact that this session, as wonderful as it is, feels a little incomplete. I knew I was going to be asked to be speaking on time, but what I hadn't really fully prepared for was the fact that the person that I knew in the world who cared the most about time, Jay Cross, someone that many of you know, had passed away last fall. And he's the person who not only taught me not just the value of time, but how fleeting it would be. And so I'm here this morning, really before I begin, by acknowledging the fact that we are but a very small percentage of the influence in our lives as it relates to time, the work that we do, the learning we have. And it's not just about what we have to share, but what all of us together are able to do. So with that, I would like to begin by saying that I have been in many of your shoes. I began in the actually as a brain scientist at the National Institute of Mental Health. I have been a training manager, a corporate education leader. I have been an academic. I'm a fellow at a business school. And throughout my entire career, I have cared deeply, because of the way that I was raised, the family that I grew up in, the society that I live in, I have cared deeply about the fact that we are all we have. Though I agree completely that it is not AI that is going to solve all of the problems of the world, I hope, and what I haven't really heard here, I hope that the technology and the computing power that is available, hopefully just right over the horizon, will allow us to do away with the dumb work, will allow us to do away with the work that we have never enjoyed doing, and will automate out of our daily lives the things that don't make sense. I often answer the question when people say, do I think that AI is going to replace learning or any of us? I say, if in fact technology is able to do away with your job, then it should. That's really the opportunity we have to get back to the business at hand, to the work that needs to be done, and what we are uniquely capable of doing. So with that frame for our time together, I want to begin by telling you the story of where all of this began for me, at least in my work life. And that is, I don't know the ages of all of you, I guess I'm about to admit mine, is that I was a new young trainer in 1990 when I was at Microsoft. And for those of you who remember 1990 and the technology world then, Microsoft made a decision, actually after I had been there a little while, to adopt the use of DOS, or actually DOS 5, for those of you who want a little bit of a laugh, a giggle. IBM had been supporting DOS until that point, and Microsoft made the decision that they would actually take on the support for that role. And so I was pulled in, I was brought into a meeting with one of my dearest friends at the time, who was an HR manager, and I was a training manager. And we were told by Joachim Kempen, our vice president, that in the next 9 months, Kathy and I, not a team of people, not a large group of people, but the two of us were going to be responsible for growing the division that we worked in our company, the support services division, from about 40 people to about 4,000 people. 9 months. And at the end of those 9 months, the company was going to start supporting DOS. And so it wasn't that these folks had to be ready or hired or in their jobs. They had to be taking live calls from irate people. They had to truly understand what it means to support a product that everyone universally disliked. And it was our job not only to find all those people, but to train them, prepare them, to ready them to face the onslaught of what was in front of us. Talk about a time crunch. We had to figure out how to make this work. And so we were given the opportunity to go off-site for a couple of days. We were just given that time to figure out what in the world we were going to do. And while I would like to say we could use the knowledge we had of how we move forward in the world, after spending 2 days together and talking about what all of our options were, we realized there was no way. There was no way to bring on that many people, to train them, to prepare them, to ready them, to be able to solve such a complex problem in such a short time. Well, until we started realizing that we were brought in, what was unique to us is that we were brought into these roles not because we were seasoned managers who had all the expertise and knowledge. Far from it. We were brought into these roles because we weren't embedded in the way that we did things, that we would look at things with a clean slate. And in our case, that's what we did. We realized, one, that there probably were people out in the world who already could do a good job, and it was going to be our task to find them. Some of the people that we hired, they probably would know a good bit of this knowledge, and instead of assuming that no one knew anything, so often as education does today, we had to assume that many of them knew many things, and it was our task to figure out what they knew and what was the gap, and how it is that we would move them from where they were to where they needed to be. So here's what we did. First thing we did is that we did away with the complex hiring process that is so often done in any organization. And we printed on business-sized cards the contact information for our recruiting services. I will tell you, this is before the web. There wasn't a URL they could go to. It had a phone number and a name of a person who was going to answer that phone. And though we talk often about referrals in the hiring process, this was a referral process unlike any you had ever seen. If you were getting gas for your car, if you were at a restaurant or at a family gathering, and you met someone you thought, oh, that person would not be horrible on the telephone and they would not be rude to people they don't know, you took out a card out of your pocket and you handed that card to them and say, if you're ever interested in a new job, I might have one for you. And it immediately streamlined a very complex process by having at least one filter that was already taken care of. So that was pretty novel. It's still very novel. I encourage organizations that I work with today to adopt similar sorts of practices, and sadly, very few of them take me up on it. But those that have dramatically decreased the amount of time it takes to go through the 17 interviews in order to get a job, and still aren't the greatest hires in the world. So that was bringing people in. We brought people in, and then we tested them. Now, not the types of tests, they were already hired to determine if they were going to be good at the job, but we wanted to get a sense as to what it is that they already knew. And then we focused what they were going to be learning on what it is that they didn't know already. That was day one. And here's the kicker. On day two, we put them on the phones. I'm going to let that settle in. On day two, we put them on the phones. Now, when I explain this to people, I often have people say, oh, I think I had one of those people. They probably answered my call. It's all coming clear to me now. I understand why they didn't have a clue what they were talking about. We as educators know that nothing teaches better than experience. And nothing is more eye-opening than knowing that you are completely unequipped to move forward in your job. And so immediately we get focus on time, on attention, on what needed to be done. Now, we had other support engineers available to them to be able to work that out, but these are the days really before the release came out, so it worked for all of us. But then we spent the next 6 weeks readying them for those roles. I'm often asked if it worked. It did work. We rolled that out, and we were then actually able to roll out Windows 3.0 and 3.1 and all those other funny things that I look back on and I think, oh, we thought that was such a big deal, and now it's no deal at all. But I explain that to say that so often what we're doing is we're trying to add things to our lives. We're trying to do too many things. When asked the question I'm often asked, which is the real issue that we are out of time, I would argue that the real issue is that we're doing too many dumb things. We're spending way too much time agreeing to do things that have always been done that way, or that are new and just foolish. The opportunity we have is to remember that the only way to really unlearn something is to write over it with something better. And our opportunity is not to add more to our lives and to be able to solve our time issues that way, but instead to ask the question every single day of every single decision you make, is this a good use of my time? Is this the right use of my time? Can this just not be done at all? And I implore you to take that tact, because if we're to add more to our lives, I don't know where that's going to happen, and neither do you based on the polling results. Our opportunity is to look with fresh eyes and to say, we're out of time. I live in the US, probably as you could tell by my demeanor and the way that I speak. And if anyone feels that they are out of time, it is me and the other Americans sitting beside you right now. But many of you I know also feel that way. And that is every day that we are choosing to work in a mediocre way. We are settling because our boss or our institution has said this is what we need to do today, and you need to do this for whatever the pebbles put in your path lead. You are capitulating. You are choosing to settle. And I encourage you to say no more. Everyone I know wakes up every morning and asks the question, is this the day that I'm going to make a difference? And then the day gets ahead of you. And at the end of the day, you think to yourself, look, another day gone by where I really didn't make that big of a difference. And I'm going to say, and I say this with love, that's no one's fault but your own. A few years ago, after having a career in the learning field for pretty much all of my life, actually, I started teaching classes when I was in second grade. I was invited to a meeting by someone that I barely knew in the small community where I live in rural Virginia. And the fellow, who was someone fairly famous, actually, who had moved to my community, asked me if I would be interested in joining a project. And their focus are some of the brightest minds in the world, actually. If I was interested in working on a project that was specifically being designed to reshape, fundamentally shift the systems of our society. That was big, that was bold. I've been, I guess it was in my bio, I haven't even really explained, I've been a corporate fixer, actually, for the last about dozen years. And I've gone into some of the world's largest corporations, usually at their biggest, desperate, most painful time of need, and have been in the position, because of what I know about how the brain works and how people work, and how they are personally or just tragically handling how they deal with their people. I've been in a position to help organizations make global large-scale change. And so this organization, this gentleman invited me to a meeting and asked if I wanted to join them and help them out. And to cut a very long story short, I said no, I wasn't interested. I'd worked on too many sort of save the world projects, and they'd all ended badly, and they'd broken my heart along the way. And as we were leaving, he said, if you choose not to join us, and I believe you will, and I should say I did. If you choose not to join us, would you please stop helping companies that really should die? And that's really what I'm here to ask you too. If we are out of time, it's because we have done dumb things. We hire the smartest people we can find, and then we treat them like idiots. We develop policies and procedures to keep that one person from doing that one thing again and again, as opposed to saying, let's find the people who are smart and thoughtful and caring, and let's find ways to help build experiences and provide them resources so they can do what needs to be done. Let me repeat that. I believe after spending 30 years as an educator in one way, shape, or form, that the only value of education is to provide people experiences and resources, and not just get out of the way, but run as far and as fast as you possibly can. But the people around us are capable of doing amazing things. And the only way we're ever going to get their help, their support, is to ask them, to encourage them, and most importantly, to model that I too am here to make a difference, and I am not going to anymore do the mediocre, the dumb, the silly, the time wasting. We've all done it. I could spend all of my time giving you examples. But when I look back on my career, that is my only regret of how much time I wasted. Not because I had Facebook, I didn't. Not because I was out or spending time on the phone or doing other things. I love efficiency. I love focusing on the most important things. But I look back and I realize I agreed to do dumb stuff. And I have no doubt in my mind, as smart and as wise as you all are, that you are doing it too. But here's the challenge. I don't just need the energy and the experience that I have. I need it from every single one of you. I had 4 stops to get to Germany for this conference. And it involved Lufthansa in this case, which is really complicated. And I chose to spend my precious time, your precious time, here today. And I keep standing in front of people. I apologize for that.
That's cool.
Because I need your help. And we each turn to your neighbors, need the help of one another. We're out of time. Please, stop doing the silly stuff. When you catch yourself doing it, do something that's going to move you in a different direction. Model for the people that you work with that there is another way. If this is not the day where you say, I'm going to make that difference, make it tomorrow. I know you can. You're our only hope. Every single one of us is required to make this difference. And that, to me, is not just a matter of time. It's a matter of effort and a matter of learning. And if the people who understand how learning happens better than anyone else in the world are not going to stand up and make a change, I don't know who is going to. And I hope we never get to that point. I need you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So guys, we now had 3 really fun perspectives on the question of learning in the time of acceleration, making time for learning. What I would like to see is what questions you would have for the 3 of our speakers. One thing I can say is that however different they were, they all seem to have a lot of courage. Marcia in having courage and telling all of us that we're mediocre. Andreas in having the courage to tell Xavier that corporates cannot actually learn, and Xavier in going to his big corporate and completely turning around the way they're learning, given that they were operating and must operate in order to survive in an accelerating time. So if you had any questions, please bring them up. I have one burning question on my own already. Xavier, can you tell us in 2 or 3 sentences, what did you do, and I'm going to count your sentences, in order to get the buy-in from that system in which you were operating, the bank that was about to spit you out because you were the external person coming in and telling them you have to do it all differently. What did you do to get the authorizing environment? And in the meantime, send questions in. We're going to see them on the screen. Xavier, what did you do?
Yes, I think the best way in that case to accompany the change and to explain is exemplarity of management and leadership.
Okay, that's one sentence.
It's
what did you do?
Accompany and explain to the manager and the leader what the aim of the program. That's all. They have to accept and to be exemplary.
So Xavier just went and explained it, and then magically they all agreed?
Yeah, we accompany them. We have a lot of leadership program. We have a lot of management. We create some online tools, but we also have a lot of meeting with managers to explain that and to make them in the system. If they are in the system, if they show to their employees, it's work. If they don't show, it's not work. And sometimes it's not working, but we have to change the manager.
So, Andreas, in Javier's place, they're sending managers to startups so that they can learn how to deal with time. You told us just now that the startups have got no time and no resources to learn. How can this actually function?
It depends. It actually depends on, and I'm building on what Marcia said, on you and you and you and you. If you're a manager and you want to learn how to change your ways, you can start tomorrow. But if you're a manager who's trying to avoid how to change your ways, you're probably already doing it, and you will not be successful in a startup environment. Every one of us is a start-upper in one sense. We take up new things, and this really human approach to how we take up new things is what makes us productive. Learning a corporate lingo and how an SAP system works does not make us productive. It makes us part of the automation. So it's up to you. If you really believe that working in a startup environment will make you more productive, I dare you to do it because it's fascinating and you can drop a lot of the stupid stuff that you have been doing. But there's also stupidity in startups. They might be shallow, they might not have the experience that you have, and to find your way through that is the learning journey that I'm interested in. But it's up to you if you want to learn.
Thank you. Now, Marcia, you were speaking a lot about the wrong things that people do, right? Is there an example of the right things of a company, for example, that chooses not to do the mediocre thing as time is accelerating and things need to learn?
Absolutely.
Give us one.
The organizations that I see consistently being able to move forward fastest, not just for the sake of being more productive, for encouraging shareholder wealth, but to be able to build a culture where people are able to be at their best.
Name of the company.
I would be uncomfortable in this case. I'd be happy to give you some examples, but this one particular
Give us
one.
three.
Pardon me?
3 examples.
Well, so let me give you what they did. So that I think that was what you're...
Name.
Sure. So, all right. Well, then, all right. So, let me give you 3 examples of organizations that I can publicly say I work with.
They're not dumb in learning, exactly.
Pardon me?
You can publicly say that they're not dumb in learning.
Yes. Well, so you have to keep in mind, the non-disclosures that I have to sign to be able to work with the organizations I work with is the bread and butter of the work I do. So I'm very hesitant to share
Positive news?
those examples. No, positive examples because, well, another time. The Marcia McClellan companies, so MMC is a worldwide conglomerate of organizations that have made a concerted effort over the last 10 years since some quite horrible scandals, frankly, of how I began to work with them, to be able to figure out how to create a culture where people mattered more, to be able to have the high touch that they offered their customers to their employees as well, who their internal customers in that case. And so what they did is they actually put by all the elevators, I mean, to give very, very specific, a request, are you interested in becoming a teacher? Sounds crazy for people in the insurance business, and they joke that the only thing all employees of this organization have in common, they're in the insurance business, is that they are all risk averse. Only thing they have, all employees have in common. And the question is, are you interested in being a teacher? And they actually built an entire culture around the fact that every single person in the organization would become a teacher for one another, for their clients, for the work that they would do. And then they asked so they had sign-up sheets, literally, at the elevators where people could sign. They sent them out for those who worked at home and every office around the globe, asking, are you interested in being a teacher? And then after that, they then asked them the next question, what is preventing you from being a teacher? And what they found out is that somebody might say, well, my manager wouldn't give me the time to do it. Or, I don't even know how to use these tools today, so how could I do those? and they systematically looked through every single thing that was preventing them from being able to have everyone teach and learn together, and systematically went through those, removed those obstacles, worked with those people, not as a herd of sheep, but as individuals who had come through their journey in different sorts of ways and could make a real difference and share what they knew as a result of that.
So this was really about creating a customer experience, in a sense, from what the learners were concerned. Let me take that to Xavier, because we have a question here about the resistance. I find it fascinating, Xavier, that you seem to have used the fact that times are accelerating, and that clients want accelerated services in order to, on the one hand, really crunch the time to learning and to start into just-in-time learning. On the other hand, expand the person-on-person coaching. What kind of resistance did you encounter, and at what levels? It sounds like a fun proposition. If I was the manager, I would say, great, let go, right?
What's funny, it's before the system was, you have to do this training, you have to do that. And we are focused on the need of our employees. It's our employees' experiences. We are focused on the need of our employees. So it's not so difficult for them to accept the system if the system corresponds to what we need. It's easier for them. And for me, it's not the problem. The problem is perhaps to help people to share the knowledge. Because, as you say, every people could be a teacher in his way of expertise and could teach in on-job training or on social learning platform. They are able to do that. But a lot of them, and different culture, for example, in Ukraine, you don't share your knowledge, it belongs to you. And they say, if you want my knowledge, you have to pay. You have to pay because it's their culture. In Africa, in some countries, they say, okay, we give knowledge. In some other country, it's not the same. In Turkey, very easy. I give you my knowledge because my knowledge, if I share with you, I will be a winner. In China, different. It's my knowledge. You have to pay for. So it's very different. It's very different culture, and we have not a global approach about that. We have to consider that it's not difficult. It's just a change of mindset. And we are focused on their own need. Corporate need, we have less and less. People want to be support on the problems they have in daily job. They don't want more. After, if they want, you have some people who want to develop their own. My assistant one day, I told her in meeting, I say, what you want to be trained? And she say, nothing. I say, oh, but I have to write something on the paper because it's on the paper in the process. She said, but did I do well my job? I say, yeah. Did you want to tell me to do anything that I'm not good? I say, no. So it say, oh, I just want to do my job. I do well. I want to have an equilibrium between personal and professional, so I don't need any trainings. And the French law say, you have to guarantee the employability of my people. What I do? I say, okay, go ahead. If you need, come. If you don't need, do what you want. I have to respect the aspect, even if I'm not agree. Why? Because she's more important than my point of view.
Right. So it really all boils down to customer experience or the user experience that you were looking in there. We're getting a couple of questions around time sinks or time wastes. And I'm wondering whether I get to flip this around and say, okay, maybe Andreas, what, from a structured learning perspective, rather than just making people do a job and watch what they're doing while they're doing it, from a structured learning perspective, what do you think is the least waste of time? Or the most productive? Maybe in your own firm.
I'll take that as a provocative question. You get a provocative answer. I think wasting time is the most productive learning time. In design thinking, we build landscapes that you learn in and that you experience a workshop in or a problem. And the most important thing is that you have a relaxed zone where you can sit down and just think about something else. And once you do that, and come back into the workshop, all of a sudden the ideas are there. So you need to waste time to learn.
Oh, there we go. I think we need to flip the seats, right?
It's time to learn.
Yeah,
Okay, so Marcia, you have just all told us to stop wasting our time. Again, can I challenge you in telling
Absolutely.
us how to not waste, i.e. what would be a really productive learning experience, a personal one perhaps?
I'd say in this case, I'm completely with you, and I agree wholeheartedly that if we're intentionally wasting time, if what we are doing is actually spending time with our feet up on our desk and thinking and reflecting and looking back at those things, that we're in wonderful steads. I think it's all when I refer to wasting time, I don't mean those at all. That to me is not wasting time. If anything, that is the real work for us to be doing, and that has not gone on for, has happened often enough. So, I'm going to do very, very quickly, and I believe I'll answer your question with the question that Ryan had asked that we see through the tweet stream as well. And that is that I will say that on the higher ed side, the question was, what's the biggest, stupidest time-wasting activity you've seen in higher ed? And that is forgetting that experience and resources are what learning is all about. And that is that I see that in the work I do in the academy is that there's still, even in a case-based environment, there is still not enough working on creating experiences for people to go through, to try out, to fail at, to succeed in, and to be able to build not just the physical muscles to be able to work differently, but to actually myelinate your brain so that it's actually easier to do something when you're in a pinch and you actually have to get it done. And so I encourage people not to replace the traditional education systems with online versions of the same, but to instead get out of, move from the walls and to be able to say, what is an experience that would allow somebody to learn this themselves, to actually be able to build the resources within themselves to be able to do that. I'd say from a personal experience, I was an outward bound educator for many years of my life, an experiential educator through and through. And there are times that I look back on times of canoeing down a river or being out in the wilderness very much in the same sort of way, when it allowed me to see things from a very just different vantage point. And if we're asking people to be sitting down and facing forward, that is still the work of many people when they get out of school, but it's increasingly less and less our work, and there are more people standing and moving around, and we want to be encouraging more of that, not less of that, and the way to do that is to be able to build those muscles. But in that same vein, I want to say on the corollary, on the corporate education side, I'm growing beyond frustrated with us spending so much time convincing our clients that learning is not just learning, that there is informal learning, and there is formal learning, and there is social learning, and there is learning is learning. The way our brain takes in information is actually the same. I can point out how the neurotransmitters work. And it is only us who are creating these very false categories that don't make a lot of sense. And so I'm thankful that most people in universities are not doing that. But on the business side, I encourage you to stop trying to convince anybody of that, because people know they've been learning their whole lives. They know how learning happens, and it is only us who's putting some of those roadblocks in their path to being able to do that and providing them the experiences to be able to make that work.
That's very encouraging, because it's a positive view on how we can actually take learning, make the right time for learning for us. One of the folks in the audience really wants to see how can we balance the corporate view of Xavier against the challenging ideas that we've heard from Marcia and Andreas. And I was curious, Xavier, if you're listening to this, what you're just hearing here, I'm wondering what goes through your mind here. Do you think about, okay, these people think that at a corporate we'll waste time, but at BMP we actually don't waste any time anymore, certainly not on the wrong learning. What do you think about that idea about leapfrogging, about leaping before you look? You have a lot of money entrusted to you. Would your customers want you to leap before you look?
It's very complex, because I love what I hear, and in my point of view, I would like to work on that sort of world, but I don't. I'm a big corporation, and I'm working on 50,000 people. But we not forget that people at my level are not the same level that if we are, say, 70 people in Burkina Faso, 70 people, they're learning differently. They don't have access to technology. They have to work on different way. But sometimes when they need some knowledge and they don't have the knowledge near them, they need to have access to knowledge outside, but not outside the bank because it's a knowledge from the bank. With Skillsoft, we don't care. Skillsoft we develop by company, external company. It's not our problem. Our problem is the internal knowledge of the firm, and we have to provide that. So I love this theory and to waste time, but believe me, it's not on the. By now, it will be arrive in few years because we still have some command and control manager. And you cannot say from one day to another day, okay, bye-bye. We will have some new manager arrive in a few months. No, it's not happened like that. We have a manager who have 50 and we have 15 years in the bank and we still have to work. So what we have to prepare the new manager of tomorrow. And they will be more agile, but we have to deal also with people who are inside the bank. And you cannot change that, all this mindset. It's not easy. So we have to understand and to detect who will be able to support all this new strategy of learning. I have to deal with one reality, which is a massive access to knowledge. And I have to try to find the way. I don't say that I have a correct answer. Every day, I am like a startup. I try one solution. It's not working. I try another solution. Next year, I will try to 360 learning. I don't know if it's working. We will try to learning on video or on your video you can share. I don't know if it's working. I feel like a startup in the way.
So you're leaping.
Yes.
On learning.
Well, I'm learning every day and try, but the only problem, if I'm learning, I have to have 50,000 people who are on the same way. And believe me, it's not difficult. And sometimes people say, it's not working. Yeah. It's not working. I say, okay, great. I will change my mind.
So I can see Andreas wants to do a rebuttal. But before you do that, Andreas, there's some people who say acceleration is fiction. Right now, if you said that, you're in the minority here because 9% of the people answered that everything is accelerating and you actually feel and you're living in an accelerated way. But the minorities are usually the ones that have the right thing to say to stimulate the conversation. The theme on the acceleration side that both you and Marcia were also pushing, were saying, you know, if we're actually accelerating, we also need to forget stuff. We need to unlearn, so that we can have new things that we learn. Can you give us an example of that and how unlearning or forgetting would work in some of the clients that you have advised?
Let me put it this way, and I think that puts it both into a nutshell, because the comment is that I was presenting an academic view to you that is false. Every day I work with people, maybe like you, maybe like people you know, especially 50-year-old and above white men who have created the organizations they live in. They have been living in these organizations for 15, 20, 25 years, and all of a sudden they're confronted with something that they experience as speed, as acceleration, and they're asked to be more innovative, to give more input, to have better ideas, and they can't. They're frustrated like hell, because they have learned everything that the corporation has told them that is right and how the world works, and all of a sudden it's not valid anymore. So what we do in design thinking is we try to free their spirits, if you wish, so they can actually be productive with what they have learned, and they find a new perspective on learning. So while I have an academic background, this perspective is from our lives. And again, I'm family with Marcia here. If you don't want to change your life, fine. But there's lots of people out there who profit and benefit from being more productive and from unlearning what the corporations have told them.
Is unlearning hard?
I'm sorry?
Is unlearning hard?
Very hard. It's the hardest thing to do. And also with Xavier, I'm not opposed to this. We walk hand in hand. There are large corporations. We have made them. Are they good? I don't know. Do they need to change? Yes. Here in Germany, corporations fall apart because of hierarchies. Look at VW, falling apart. Look at Deutsche Bank, falling apart. These companies cannot unlearn what they have learned, and they have only learned to streamline knowledge.
Marcia.
Yeah, I'm
I
jumping
can
the
see
bit
it.
to say, one, physically, learning is impossible. I mean, so let's get that on the table. I'm a big fan of replacing what we're doing with more effective means. It's not that physically you can't just cast off brain cells and habits and patterns. It doesn't work that way. And so let's be realistic and say the question becomes is how are we developing practices that are sensible and humane and effective, and how are we replacing and being very rigorous about replacing things that we've been doing for too long that no longer work for us, society at large. So I want to be clear that, yeah, it's not just hard, but it's actually impossible in that sort of way. What seems to, I think we all agree on or have said in a similar sort of way, is that it is not a matter of casting out that we need to make all these changes, is that as educators, we're in a position to help individuals understand themselves and to support themselves in how they work. It's just physically impossible at this point in time for anyone to know what is the right solution for another person. What we can do instead is to help people, as the Temple of Delphi says, know thyself. And yet we live in a society that has been so consistent of saying that we should all be the same in some way, but we're far from the same. And what we need to do is be able to take the time not to be able to say, to treat each person differently, but to recognize the fact that they are, if we treat them that way or not, and to instead ask the question, what is it that we can do to support you in however you do it? And that seems very inefficient sometimes in a corporate means, but it's a heck of a lot easier. If instead you say, here are the things that are available, and we're here to support you in however we can, but our emphasis is on allowing you to do what you need to do and to remove the obstacles from people to be able to do the natural things that they are capable of doing, that we have for too long prevented them from doing by putting so many guards on them and kept them from doing what was right.
Then let us we've got 6 minutes. I just wanted to see what you could reflect on a perhaps broader level also, because a couple of people said, maybe this is about stopping doing mundane tasks. I think what we're really talking about is how to stop doing mundane learning and do the learning in a way that it is adjusted with the accelerating times. If you think globally now about the challenges that we face as the world, these can be geopolitical challenges. These can be challenges to do with how we organize our societies. I think we all feel we're at the moment in a time when there's a lot of instability around us. It's not just in our corporations, it's in the bigger world. We started hearing from Xavier from one of those big global trends and influences that makes us make more or make different time for learning. Can you think of any other bigger accelerator, something that will make us, whether it's digitization or something else, something that would make companies like the ones you know or work with really make more or make different time for learning, something that's global and bigger than your corporations? Xavier?
Hard question. I have to tell you every day I don't know what will be future of learning. Even me, myself, I don't know if in few years I will be in learning development. I don't know if in few years there will be a learning development, because we try to develop the learning culture. And that's time to develop the learning culture. I don't know, by now people, young people or people who enter a firm, we say we will train to corporate knowledge. Very great. But tomorrow, people will learn outside and they don't care about corporate knowledge. They just focus on their own development. What will be my job? What will be the job of learning developer? I don't know. I just know that we have to give to the better environment. We have to act on a global level, on local level. We have to find the most open and the most wide offer of training, of development. We have to invent the new learning of tomorrow. I don't know if we will have a solution. The world, unfortunately, is going faster and faster. We have to adapt. We have to find some other solution. Social learning, as I say in the learning will be social or not. The learning will be development and learning by your peer or not. And we will perhaps disappear as a structure in learning in the top level of corporate. But we still have to develop some learning in compliance, in process, in something like that, we are just specified, and we have to attack and to have all the people. If US government say to the BNP Paribas, 180,000 people have to be learned on this module, we have to have 100,000 people who do this module. And we have 70 modules of compliance. We have many, many things. So we will have a job, not funny one, but I don't know what will be the organization of learning. I just say that tomorrow it's tomorrow. I will find a solution. And if tomorrow my team is disappeared, my team will disappear.
So Xavier from the bigger corporate here says, let's be agile. I don't actually know what's going to be out there in the world. What I do know is that people will have to learn somehow. Who will do it? How will do it? Let's see. Marcia, what's the big global development that might continue to shift acceleration and put in question how we make time for learning?
Well, not to blame the banks for this, but what I think
it's always a good thing.
Always
works.
Is that as a society, we have stopped having float. That may be a concept that's new to many people, but when you used to send in a check, you had a couple of days to be able to put the money in your bank account if that's what you needed to do. And that's a concept is called float. And so we're at a point now where it feels like everything is accelerating. I'm not so sure I believe that everything's accelerating either. It's just that there's no buffer anymore. There's no time anymore between the time that you learn that it needs to happen and the time that it has to be done. And so, so the opportunity here that we have, and when I say one of the questions is what is it that we can do if the educators are all out of the jobs, is that if anyone were equipped to be able to continually be able to help others, it's those who understand how learning happens and why it happens and care about it and continue to allow it to be nurtured. I think that is the opportunity that we all have to be able to make a big difference, is to get out of the classrooms or to get off of the e-learning systems and to get into the world and be able to help everybody be learning and teaching nonstop, because that, I think, is our future. And that's not just in any one industry or as entrepreneurs or as corporations or as individuals, but as human beings. Many of us probably remember when we thought videos were going to replace the education department, and then there was going to be CDs that were going to replace the education. And so we can go down the long list of things that we've been people have tried to convince us are going to happen, but the bottom line is that we have been learning and sharing and teaching throughout time, and I don't see that changing. What will hopefully change is the form factor, the way that we congregate together and believe that as a group we are able to make these changes instead of getting out and being able to share that in every single thing that every single person is doing nonstop.
Thank you. Andreas, the big global development that might change further how acceleration shapes how we're making time for learning?
We see two tendencies in the world right now. They've always been there, but one is what our chancellor calls post-factual times. So facts don't matter, emotions do. We have seen Brexit. In the US, we've had a development that was surprising to some. That's one branch of the story. The other branch is, and that was what I'm talking about, is if you discover what benefits you can reap from diversity, from conflict and contrast, from different setups, then you have a cornucopia of new possibilities. If you're streamlining knowledge, and if you're teaching compliance, if you're adhering to the process, then you're on the side of assimilation, making things alike and streamlining knowledge. And I mean that when I say that. Whoever I have the opportunity to work with, if this door is opened, and you see there's a world out there beyond the expectations that a streamlined corporation has towards the individual, then learning happens. And that's a big change I'm hoping for.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you sharing your thoughts and questions. We are ending this at -05 seconds on time. I hope you enjoyed the talk. I think our illustrious panel will stay a little bit longer if you want to come and have a quick chat with them directly. And have a wonderful Friday and rest of the OEB.
Thank you.